Hello, this is Jane, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the February 26th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The first article I'm going to read is the headline, which reads, New Powers for Transit Cops. Province seeks to allow TTC constables to make arrests for drug use. And then this article is actually on page 9, where there's another headline which reads, PCs want more power for TTC officers. Special constables would enforce public drug use laws. And this is by Andy Takagi. Premier Doug Ford says people using drugs on the TTC need to be arrested as the province mulls expanded powers for the special constables. If someone's using drugs or shooting up drugs on a subway, they need to be arrested and removed, Ford told reporters at Queen's Park on Wednesday. The provincial government is exploring a move that would grant greater authority to the city's specialized transit peace officers. The regulatory change is currently open to public comments until Sunday. It's important to have a clean, safe subway system, and right now, people aren't feeling safe, Ford added. So we have to make sure we have law enforcement there and have a safe subway system that men, women, and children can ride safely. A spokesperson for Solicitor General Michael Kerzner confirmed that the government was looking at ways to provide additional tools to special constables to enforce public drug use laws. According to TTC data, concerns about safety and reported incidents of crimes against riders have eased since they peaked during a series of random acts of violence in 2022 and 2023, including the fatal stabbing of 16-year-old Gabrielle Magalhaes. Still in January, 39% of surveyed TTC riders said they were dissatisfied with safety on the system, a figure that has remained relatively consistent since 2023. For every 1 in million riders in January, there were 2.05 incidents of offenses against customers, including theft, assault, and harassment, city data shows. Sarah Kennedy, head of the Ontario Special Constable Association, welcomed the prospect of greater authority for the TTC officers, but warned that they would need more tools, including tasers, to handle enforcement-oriented interactions between special constables and people under the influence of drugs. Some of our officers have been grievously injured due to the restrictions that are imposed on them when compared to what is available to police officers, Kennedy said. The availability of taser in the police context has resulted in fewer injuries to officers and subjects and the peaceful resolution of dangerous situations. TTC Special Constables are peace officers appointed by the Toronto Police Service Board who have greater authority than the provincial offences officers hired by the transit system who only engage in fair enforcement. Police and special constable presence on the TTC has come under close scrutiny in the past. When the city planned to increase the number of police officers on the transit system after a rise in crimes in 2021, Ontario's human rights watchdog warned it could lead to an increase in racial profiling. In 2019, a Star investigation found that the agency had collected the personal information of thousands of riders, a disproportionate number of them Black, in a practice critics likened to police carding. And later in 2021, a TTC report found that Black and Indigenous riders were grossly overrepresented in interactions with TTC officers, including special constables. The possibility of greater powers for TTC special constables still has a ways to go. Even if the province moves ahead with the regulatory change, it would also need to be approved by the Toronto Police Service Board. The board is aware of the proposed regulation from the Solicitor General, said a police board spokesperson. It will review and consider the regulation at the appropriate time once it is finalized and its implications are clear. TTC spokesperson Stuart Green said Tuesday that the special constables are highly skilled and trained professionals who continue to keep customers and employees safe in all situations and will engage with police and specialized outreach workers as required. The city and Mayor Olivia Chow have rolled out a slew of programs and expanded the presence of community safety programs. In September, Chow announced that the Toronto Community Crisis Service would staff Spadina, Bloor Yonge, and Union stations to respond to calls along the U-bend of Line 1. Body-worn cameras were also rolled out for all special constables earlier this year. And in November, Toronto Police announced they would staff neighborhood community officers to patrol parts of Line 1. What Ford is trying to roll out here undermines what the city is doing. These are completely opposite approaches, said Toronto community worker Diana Chan McNally. I think this is really scary and actually causes more safety issues overall than it's attempting to resolve. McNally said the province isn't providing a solution to the root of the problem, which is that people don't have anywhere to go. While the number of riders who feel unsafe on the TTC is still too high, Andrew Pulsiver, executive director of transit advocacy group TTC Riders, said the figures are trending in the right direction. It's hard to gaslight people and tell them that transit is getting safer when they don't feel safe, he added. He said he doesn't believe the city needs more enforcement on transit. We've called for multiple times more staff presence, things like station ambassadors and Toronto Community Crisis Service workers. And the next article is also from the front page. Under the byline State of the Union, White House visit puts harsh spotlight on NHL players. Trump used gold medal team as political props, expert says. And this is by Mark Coley. Watched over by portraits of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Austin Matthews shook hands with U.S. President Donald Trump. I know every one of you, Trump said as the U.S. men's hockey team streamed into the Oval Office, gold Olympic medals around their necks. These are big guys. While the mood was jovial in the White House, the team's visit on Tuesday was wrapped in political implications and controversy over FBI Director Kash Patel's participation in a post-win celebration, Trump's offhand quip about the women's team, the laughs from players at Trump's joke, and the decision of some to attend the State of the Union address when Trump used the team to demonstrate his Win Big American agenda. And for those who play Canadian NHL teams, and the implications of visiting a president who has threatened to annex Canada and are even more complicated. Willfully or not, these players have become political symbols to some. There's no real ability and no real appetite, I think rightfully so, to delineate the office of the presidency from the actions of the U.S. state right now, said Taylor McKee, a professor at Brock University who studies the intersection of sport and society. For that reason, it makes athletes visit the White House a distinctly political act. Like so many things, it wasn't always this polarizing. Visiting the White House has always been a political act, according to John Valentine, who researches sports and Canadian nationalism at MacEwan University in Edmonton, but it has only become more so with time. The tradition dates back to at least 1865, and World Series champions have been visiting for more than 100 years, according to ESPN. NBA champions began visiting in 1963, and Super Bowl champions followed 17 years later. The 1990-91 Pittsburgh Penguins were the first NHL team to visit. Notable stars have skipped out along the way. When the Boston Celtics won the NBA Finals in 1984, Larry Bird didn't attend. When the Chicago Bulls won in 1991, Michael Jordan missed it to play golf. Missing visits for outspoken political reasons, however, became more common in the 2010s under President Barack Obama. After the Boston Bruins won the Stanley Cup, goalie Tim Thomas did not accept Obama's invitation because he believed the federal government has grown out of control, he wrote on Facebook. He was one of the first to explicitly say he would not attend because he didn't support the president, Valentine said. The public spects kicked into overdrive with Trump. When Golden State Warriors star Stephen Curry said his team could skip its visit in 2017, Trump uninvited everyone, blaming Curry for hesitating. The same thing happened with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2018. 5 U.S. men's hockey players did not attend Trump's White House visit. Kyle Connor of Winnipeg Jets, Jake Guentzel of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Brock Nelson of the Colorado Avalanche, and Jackson Lacombe of the Anaheim Ducks, and Jake Ottinger of the Dallas Stars. Meanwhile, Matthews visited the White House but didn't stick around for the State of the Union in the House chamber. At practice on Wednesday, Matthews avoided politics when asked. The team that wins the Stanley Cup every year accepts the White House invitation to go, so I just think it's something that you do because we are proud Americans, he told reporters, according to David Alter of Hockey News. Whatever your political beliefs may be, hopefully something like this will bring more unity to the country. For us, we believe it's our great honor, no matter who's in office. McKee has no doubt the players appeared as blatant acts of political theater, whether they knew it or not. They look like political props, McKee said, and if they're being used as political props, you can't fault people for questioning their placement in those places. For Trump, the men's hockey team is a powerful political tool to attach himself to, according to Christy Allain, a sociologist at St. Thomas University in New Brunswick. Trump wants to hitch his wagon to quote-unquote winners. It has nothing to do with hockey, said Allain, the Canada Research Chair in Physical Culture and Social Life. His fandom is not about hockey, but it's about seeing the U.S. beat Canada at a time when the U.S. wants to beat Canada in other ways. That makes the presence of players on Canadian teams particularly complicated. Will Matthews be booed? Elaine doesn't think so, but she expects fans will have complicated emotions about the Maple Leafs captain. And before I continue, I just need to remind you you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the next article also comes from the front page under the byline Courts. I became a recluse after Stronach assault. Woman testifies. Witness says she gave up nursing career after Valentine's Day incident in 1986. And this is by Betsy Powell. A former nurse repeatedly broke down in anguish in a downtown Toronto courtroom on Wednesday as she recounted how Frank Stronach sexually assaulted her at a lakefront condo hours after meeting her for the first time at his bar, Rooney's, on Valentine's Day in 1986. Numerous times the judge and prosecutor intervened when the woman became so overwrought that her words became indecipherable. They urged her to calm down, focus, breathe, and speak more slowly. The witness appeared unsettled from the start, struggling to spell her first name and needlessly trying to retrieve her former nursing credentials to show the judge. She later explained she had not slept the previous night. Wednesday's proceedings also had their share of unusual moments, such as when the witness was unable to remember the word penis, and later when she produced a piece of paper with a salmon recipe along with her handwritten notes to help with her memory. Justice Anne Malloy ended up adjourning the case a few minutes early, saying the witness's testimony, perhaps because of her lack of sleep, has become too garbled. The 73-year-old is the sixth complainant to testify at this 2-week-old trial. Stronach is accused of sexually assaulting 7 women decades ago when he was the rich and powerful CEO of Magna International, an auto parts empire he founded. He still faces a jury trial in Newmarket on other sex offenses. The prosecution's case hinges on the women's accounts, making their credibility a core issue at trial. Stronach, 93, has pleaded not guilty to 12 offenses in Toronto. However, on Wednesday, at the end of the day, Crown Attorney Jelena Vlasic told Malloy the prosecution is no longer seeking a conviction on the forcible confinement count relating to the 6th complaint. I have no difficulty with that, the judge said. Stronach is still charged with sexually assaulting the ex-nurse. The woman who came to Canada 50 years ago said what happened to her with Stronach led her to quit the nursing profession. I became a social recluse, depressed, afraid to open up to people because of what happened to me. On February 14, 1986, the woman said that after finishing her evening shift at a Toronto hospital, she didn't want to go home alone, so she headed to Rooney's, where members of her ski club sometimes went bar hopping. The woman described her younger self as pretty, slim, and looking like she was 10 years younger after taking care of herself through diet and exercise. I just wanted to point out I was not looking the way I'm looking now, she testified. Nothing can be reported about the woman that could identify her. She was dressed head to toe in red and wore high heels, and when she arrived at Rooney's, it was quiet, so I thought maybe a bad decision to come. She decided to have one drink and sit on a bar stool as the disco ball's lights flashed around the room. A group of men arrived, including a good-looking, middle-aged man who sat next to her and introduced himself as Frank. He asked if she was hungry, and when she said she was, he ordered a whole bowl of shrimp on ice, very expensive, that I could never afford to eat or buy. He also encouraged her to have more to drink. The man was well-dressed and seemed nice, and she noticed no red flags. She told him she didn't plan to stay long. The subway was closing soon, and he said, "Don't worry, I can take you home," which at the time was in Hyde Park. She said she had no idea who he was. He might have told her he was a machine operator, and they talked mostly about skiing. He was from Austria and had a fairly thick accent. They danced to Frank Sinatra, crooning New York, New York. She resisted when he tried to hold her close, and she remembers him handing her a balloon and asking her to be his Valentine. "I'll never forget that for the rest of my life," she said ruefully. She said he eventually convinced her to let him drive her home, and she became nervous when he didn't follow her instructions. Once down by Lake Ontario, he told her he needed a coffee to wake up, so they'd make a pit stop at the Harbor Castle where he lived. Despite her protestations, he drove into the underground parking lot where she said she had no choice but to follow him as she didn't know where she was. They took the elevator to a high floor. She could see twinkling lights across the lake, and when she didn't see any coffee, she began realizing what his objective is. She said after sitting next to Frank on the couch, she suddenly saw him naked, lying on a huge waterbed located in a sunken room. He said, come, I want to see you naked," she testified, adding she refused and threatened to break the windows and jump in the lake. She said at some point he put his pants back on and joined her on the couch, where he told her to just relax, don't panic, don't scream or yell, don't worry, trying to calm me down. Have another drink, calm down. She said he brought out a bottle of Dubonnet, I never forget the name, which she refused to drink. He was still playing the nice guy as he sat beside her with his unzipped pants. Next, she said she could see he had an erection as he overpowered her, unzipped her pants, and forced his you-know-what inside of me. Vlasic gently tried to coax the witness to say the word, and when she didn't, defense lawyer Lenora Shamish stood up and said, penis, in a loud voice. It's penis, penis, penis. I'm going to write it down, the witness said, explaining she was stressed and searching for a more medical term. The intercourse lasted about 5 minutes, she said. Afterward, Frank drove her home, an offer she had no choice but to accept since it was close to 4 a.m. and she had no other way to get home. Before he dropped her off at her West End high-rise, she said he declined his job offer at Rooney's, telling him indignantly she was a registered nurse. The woman told the court many times on Wednesday how the experience left her traumatized. She had psychiatric treatment for depression and anxiety and eventually had to leave the nursing profession. She couldn't tell anyone because of her shame and because this was not the time to tell. This was a taboo you just suffered. A few weeks later, in a nurse's lounge, she saw Stronach's photo in the pages of the Toronto Star and realized he was Frank. She was shocked, given his achievement and status. She testified that not long after that she went to Rooney's to confront him. When he appeared to walk towards her, she refrained from shouting, but told him loud and curtly, well, Frank, hello," something like that, and he just walked away. A short time later, a bouncer asked her to leave. The trial resumes Thursday with cross-examination. And the next article is also from the front page, and it is titled, India No Longer Linked to Violence in Canada, Feds Say. Officials' comment marks change in tone ahead of Carney trip. And this is by Alex Bollingal. Ottawa. Marking a stark change from its concerns of recent years, the federal government now believes India is no longer linked to violent crimes in Canada, a senior official said Wednesday. The statement came during a briefing with journalists ahead of Prime Minister Mark Carney's highly anticipated trip to the country, with senior government officials describing progress in security talks and collaboration between Ottawa and New Delhi. We have a very robust diplomatic engagement, including between national security advisors, and I think we can say we're confident that the activity is not continuing, one of the senior officials who spoke on a condition of anonymity said Wednesday. It's a new tone that India, which continues to reject allegations its government is linked to violent crime in Canada, will welcome. But it clashes with concerns from Sikh activists like Maninder Singh, a religious leader in British Columbia. Speaking to the Star this week, Singh revealed that a Vancouver police officer had warned him there was an imminent threat to his life and those of his wife and children. It was the fourth such warning he had received from police, Singh said, since his friend and fellow activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar was gunned down outside a Gurdwara in British Columbia's Lower Mainland in June 2023. Nijjar's death took on a tense diplomatic dimension months later when the then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there was credible evidence that agents linked to the government of India had killed a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. That sparked a row that saw diplomats expelled from each country, with India's long-standing concerns that Canada harbors Sikh extremists, contrasting with Canadian intelligence that suggested New Delhi had crossed a line. Now, with 4 men charged in Nijjar's killing and further concerns fueled by RCMP claims in 2024 that New Delhi was tied to more violent crime across Canada, Carney is trying to turn the page. His government maintains it takes the security threats seriously and is working with India to address them. On Wednesday, officials went further, stating that previous concerns about active foreign interference and repression in Canada by agents linked to the Indian government no longer apply. I really don't think we'd be taking this trip if we thought these kinds of activities were continuing, a senior government official said. The Prime Minister's office, however, said in a subsequent statement that the government will continue to combat transnational repression, organized crime, and criminal acts on Canadian soil. The statement did not retract the official's remarks, but noted respect for the law is key to Canada's efforts with India. Respect for the ongoing law enforcement dialogue will continue to be the basis for our step-by-step approach to re-engagement with India, the statement said. That re-engagement aligns with Carney's vision of a pragmatic foreign policy as Ottawa seeks to reset relations and pursue deeper trade with the world's most populous country, a rising economic power of 1.4 billion people that could help wean Canada off its commercial dependence on a United States that has grown more unreliable under Donald Trump. And so forecasting new partnerships and commercial opportunities from oil and gas exports to artificial intelligence, the Prime Minister will leave Ottawa on Thursday for Mumbai and New Delhi, where he is set to meet with India's Hindu nationalist leader, Narendra Modi. The 9-day trip will also include stops in Australia and Japan. But the India leg is controversial. Scores of demonstrators from the same group Nijjar was involved with, Sikhs for Justice, gathered Wednesday on Parliament Hill to condemn Carney's India rapprochement. To Singh, the re-engagement smacks of betrayal. He believes his Khalistan advocacy put him in the crosshairs. What's different this time is that the police officer who arrived at his door this week said the threat also extends to his family. The Vancouver Police Department declined to say who they believe is behind the threat. With what this current government's doing right now, it shouldn't be this difficult to understand that you're going to shake hands with the very people that have Canadian blood on their hands, Singh said. He was referring not only to his friend's killing, but also to an extraordinary statement from the RCMP in October 2024, citing ongoing investigations the National Police Force linked India's government to violent crime across Canada, including death threats against Khalistan activists who seek an independent homeland for Sikh people, ties to organized crime, and evidence that Indian government agents were linked to homicides and violent acts. A top Canadian official at Global Affairs later confirmed in 2024 that the government believed Modi's Home Affairs Minister, Amit Shah, was involved in the allegations the RCMP had described. For Supriya Dwivedi, who was a senior advisor to Trudeau, it's too soon for serious re-engagement. She noted that former NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, himself a longtime Sikh advocate, needed personal protection in 2023 after the RCMP warned him of a threat to his life, with Global News later reporting the threat was linked to India. I can't picture another country being alleged to have followed a leader of the opposition to the point where the RCMP gets involved, and we all just sort of forget about that, Dwivedi said. The concerns aren't unique to Canada. On February 13, American prosecutors in New York announced that Nikhil Gupta, an Indian national accused of plotting to kill a Sikh separatist leader in the U.S. at the direction of an Indian government employee, had pleaded guilty to charges of murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. In an interview with The Star this week, India's High Commissioner to Ottawa, Dinesh Patnaik, suggested Canada reacted immaturely compared to the U.S. when similar allegations emerged. If you have a problem, you resolve it by working with each other. You don't get up and destroy the relationship, which is such a wide, all-encompassing relationship, just because of an issue you have wrongly presented, Patnaik said. Jody Thomas, who was Trudeau's national security advisor from 2022 to 2024, said Canadian officials laid out their intelligence about the Najir killing for Indian officials before Trudeau disclosed the allegations in Parliament in September 2023. They have seen enough to understand why we are concerned and why we continue to investigate, said Thomas. But Canada's legal process is different from that in the U.S., in that evidence and allegations aren't unsealed for public view before a trial is conducted, she explained. That led Indian officials to deny involvement. The intelligence is enough for accountability and responsibility to be assigned, Thomas said, suggesting the security concerns remain very much a live issue that has to be resolved. At the same time, she said the two countries need to reach an understanding over India's concerns about Sikh extremism and criminal separatist activity in Canada, with a prominent example being the 1985 bombing of an Air India flight linked to radical Khalistan proponents in Canada that killed 329 people. But while that happens, Thomas said it is still possible to continue to have conversations with India about trade and people-to-people ties. I need to pause here again once more to remind you that you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the next article is actually from the business section. Households face, and it's on the front page, households face growing strain. Consumer insolvency rates hit 16-year high as Canadians struggle with rising debt. Okay, it says it's under cost of living. Consumer insolvencies hit a 16-year high. New data shows Canadian households carrying higher total debt spread across more accounts. This is by Amarachi Amadike. The numbers aren't dramatic at first glance, a 2.3% annual increase in consumer insolvencies, tempered by a 3.8% dip in filings in the fourth quarter. But taken together, they tell a story about pressure building quietly for many Canadian households. New data from the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, that's the OSB, shows there were 140,457 consumer insolvency filings in 2025, the second highest annual total since record keeping began in 1987, and the highest in 16 years. While the filings eased in the fourth quarter compared to the third, the overall annual total underscores the persistent strain facing consumers. Hoyes Michaelis, a Toronto-based debt relief firm, revealed that the average unsecured debt among insolvent debtors reached $67,496 last year, the highest level since the study began in 2011. According to their bankruptcy study, Canadians filed insolvency in 2025 carried higher total debt spread across more accounts with larger balances. Credit card debt in Canada is at record levels, highest it's ever been by a wide margin, and every other form of debt is also higher, said Douglas Hoyes, an insolvency trustee at Hoyes Michaelis. Bank loans, car loans, mortgages, everything else is up. Hoyes told the Star this is largely a delayed effect of pandemic-era borrowing and government supports winding down, compounded by living costs that are rising faster than income. During the pandemic, the government created a lot of money. When you create that much money, it creates inflation, he explained. It took a couple of years. There was a huge time lag of 18 months to 2 years, and that's why we are seeing it now. Well, Hoyes Michaelis study shows homeowners still represent a small share of insolvency filings. A report from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation finds the number of homeowners in Toronto struggling to pay their mortgage each month has more than quadrupled from post-pandemic lows. Hoyes said he anticipates that homeowner distress will feed into insolvency numbers in the near future, noting that delinquencies usually precede insolvencies. What I expect we will see is a continued rise in the number of homeowners who get into financial trouble, he said, adding that he is seeing more younger people filing. For many young Canadians, the most immediate impact is on day-to-day living costs. Renters and low-income earners face rising expenses with no asset buffer, while food inflation continues to bite. It's definitely renters filing the most, Hoyes said. If you are someone who hasn't owned stuff, then you're the one who is getting hurt because you don't have the buffer from the rising asset prices, but you're getting hammered by the rising expenses. Hoy pointed to groceries as a clear example. Canada's food inflation in December was 6.2% higher than the year before. If you are at the lower end of the income scale, you spend a pretty big percentage of your income on food. A January report from TD Canada Managing Director and Senior Economist Leslie Preston stated that grocery prices in Canada are over 30% higher than they were in 2019. Had the pre-pandemic trend continued, the report states that upward pace would have been much slower at only 17% growth. With grocery prices rising faster than other major expenses, the average Canadian is now spending more than $1,600 extra per year on groceries compared with pre-pandemic levels. One person who witnesses these results play out in real time is Meryl Wharton, who has been president of Allen Gardens Food Bank since 2019. The year after COVID, we had a spike from 500 people served every week to 1,100 people. She told the Star, highlighting that the food bank is only open for a total of 5 hours each week, and things have only since gotten worse. In 2025, Allen Gardens Food Bank served 67,171 people, a 158% jump from pre-pandemic levels. Wharton said many Torontonians who never expected to find themselves relying on food banks now come to her ashamed to ask for help. I say, no, you're in need, and we're here to provide food for people who are in need, she said. Okay, the next article is under the byline of housing. Did immigration cuts actually ease prices? Otto points to rent costs coming down, but experts and data suggest other factors are at play. And this is by Ghada El-Sharif. Okay, sorry, I had some technical difficulties. As Canada's immigration tightens, politicians and social media posts are increasingly crediting a decline in temporary residents for easing rental prices in cities including Toronto, long considered one of the least affordable housing markets in the country. Just last week, Immigration Minister Lena Metlej-Diab said Canada is already seeing positive impacts from immigration caps, citing rents that are trending down in general and emphasizing cooling rents here in Toronto. In October 2024, amid declining public support for immigration, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Immigration Minister Mark Miller announced a 20% reduction in permanent resident admissions over the following 3 years, citing housing pressures as a key justification for the policy change. The decision reinforced an already growing national narrative echoed by both liberal and conservative politicians that curbing immigration would help ease housing shortages and improve affordability. But immigration levels are only one part of several factors contributing to recent declines in rental prices, according to experts and data from the government and private sector. You can attribute complex economic phenomena to one factor, said Wendy Cukier, a professor at Toronto Metropolitan University and an academic director of the Diversity Institute, who has researched immigration and housing prices. Toronto rent is the lowest it has been in 4 years, with the average asking rent falling 4.5% in January compared to the same time last year to $2,504 a month, according to a recent national rent report. At the same time, Canada's population saw the largest decline on record in the third quarter of 2025, with a dip of 76,068 people, according to data from Statistics Canada. This drop was caused in part by a cap on international students allowed into the country, introduced by the federal government starting in 2024. Which has resulted in a decline in enrollment at Ontario colleges and universities. The November federal budget contains plans to continue to limit new international student permits with a target of 150,000 this year. However, economists say falling rents cannot be explained by immigration policy alone, pointing to factors including rising rental supply and interprovincial migration trends. Immigration just talks about the demand side of things, said Rachel Battaglia, an economist at RBC. The supply side is equally as important. We've had, in Canada's housing market, a chronic undersupply of rental housing, and right now we're beginning to fill that hole. Rental construction in the Toronto area has hit its highest point in half a century, according to a November report from market research firm Urbanation. As of late September 24,893 rental units were under construction across the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, including 5,475 units that broke ground in 2025. Some 61 projects with already submitted condo applications have adjusted their proposals to build purpose-built rentals in the face of a cratering condo market that has seen sales and prices slump. Those projects include more than 27,000 units and do not include nearly 1,800 others that switched to a rental model after launching their unit sales. At the same time, many condos are being rented out by investors. The average asking rent in that city fell 4.5% in January compared to the same time last year to $2,504 a month, according to the latest national rent report. Randall Bartlett, deputy chief economist at Desjardins, said that while immigration caps have helped take some pressure off the rental market, the effect is only temporary if longer-term housing pressures like supply are not addressed. It's a temporary reprieve, not a long-term solution, Bartlett said. That long-term solution is supply. The more supply you have on the market relative to demand, the more it helps keep prices more affordable. He added that much of the increase in purpose-built rental construction stems from intentional government policy aimed at boosting supply, including removing the HST on purpose-built rental housing and providing cheap financing through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp. It's not just international migration affecting rental demand, said RBC's Battaglia. Interprovincial and intra-provincial migration are also playing a significant role as rising living costs push many Toronto residents to cheaper housing markets in Ontario or elsewhere in Canada. We have more folks living in Toronto who are leaving and going to smaller municipalities or jurisdictions within Ontario rather than the other way around, Battaglia said. We also have a lot of people from Ontario opting for smaller provinces like East Coast provinces and Alberta, too. Battaglia also noted that as the labor market weakens, more Toronto residents are either moving back home or rooming with others to save on those expenses. Between July 2024 and July 2025, the Toronto Census metropolitan area had a net intra-provincial migration loss of nearly 64,800 people to the rest of Ontario, according to Statistics Canada. Cookyear pointed to a 2025 report by Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada that found that new immigrants accounted for about 11% of the increase in average home prices and rents across all municipalities with populations of more than 1,000 between 2006 and 2021. That was based on an analysis of 4 census periods comparing the share of the population made up of recent immigrants. The connection between immigration and housing prices varied over time and across regions, highlighting that immigration is not the solitary factor influencing housing prices, the report said. Its impact is often conditioned on local economic conditions, housing policies, and supply challenges, along with other regional factors that change over time. And I need to stop one more time to remind you that you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the next article is titled Councillors Grill Recycling CEO. Head of Circular Materials admits to early transition challenges but won't release pickup data. And this is by Alisha Hasham. The CEO overseeing the problem-plagued rollout of the new provincial recycling program brought his municipal apology tour to Toronto City Hall on Wednesday, but councillors were left with more questions than answers. "Let me take that away," said Alan Langdon, CEO of Circular Materials, in response to repeated questions at the city's Infrastructure and Environment Committee about providing data to the city for a proposed monthly dashboard to track missed and delayed collections across the city and other complaints. Langdon heads up the nonprofit founded by packaging waste producers such as McDonald's, Costco, and Loblaw, which took over recycling in Ontario in January, replacing a patchwork system of municipalities and depots. The idea is that producers would take on recycling costs that come from things like plastic packaging and cardboard and recoup some of the costs by selling recycled materials. But the new system, in which Circular Materials, rather than the city, contracted Green for Life Environmental to conduct curbside blue bin pickup, was immediately trashed by furious local residents who reported missed collections, confusing or inaccurate schedules, and bins left strewn across the sidewalk, hampering snow clearing efforts. Similar complaints were made in other Ontario cities, including Kingston and the Peel region, where Langdon has also appeared before city officials in recent weeks. Speaking to the committee, Langdon didn't say the word sorry, but did admit to early transition challenges. We acknowledge the inconveniences this has caused and thank residents for their patience and understanding as we work through and resolve these challenges, he said. Langdon said missed and delayed pickups are substantially down, and scheduling issues faced by some multi-residential buildings incorrectly categorized as needing biweekly rather than weekly pickup are resolved. But he did not commit to providing regular data on pickups and complaints across the city, citing possible contractual breaches. Instead, he offered to return in the future with what can be done or send in a report. Councillor Diane Sachs, University Rosedale, said Langdon might be confident service levels will improve, but we don't know that without the data. She put forward a motion to request that information be provided publicly, but later acknowledged the city is now toothless in its demands. Circular Materials is under the province's jurisdiction. We cannot make the province do anything that is good for the people of Toronto, said frustrated Sachs, speaking about both recycling and the cancellation of automated speed cameras. All we can do is keep raising the issues and raising the issues and raising the issues. Langdon did say regular data could be provided on contamination levels in Toronto, the amount of non-recyclable material in the blue bins, which are higher in Toronto than the provincial average. Langdon said he did not have a date on when Circular Materials would stop picking up contaminated curbside recycling. Circular Materials' initial plans are going to focus on education, he said, and it will see if that takes the contamination rate down. The city committee has also requested a report in the second quarter of 2026 on whether there has been an increase in recyclables in household garbage following the changeover, something that has been noted in Peel region. Langdon said GFL will continue to pick up blue plastic bags and cardboard overflow as part of its long-term contract in Toronto. There are no immediate plans to remove it. And the next article is titled City Rides Out Roller Coaster Temperatures. It's by Joshua Smith and Alicia Wang. March is just a few days away, and Toronto can expect it to get off to a chilly start. Thursday's forecast calls for a mix of sun, clouds, cold, and snow. But there's some sunshine ahead for Friday and the weekend, and possibly rain mixed with snow. Certainly, we've gotten into a more variable weather pattern, both with respect to weather systems moving through the area on a semi-regular basis, and also temperatures bouncing all over the place, from milder than normal conditions to significantly colder than normal, said Environment Canada meteorologist Jeff Coulson. The roller coaster weather is normal for this time of year, Coulson said, with occasional Arctic air masses affecting the longer days and milder air masses coming up from the south. Though the forecast for March looks to be warmer than usual, that doesn't preclude us getting a few returns of Arctic air from time to time, Coulson said. Into the weekend, you might need to pull out an umbrella to accompany your winter gear, as Environment Canada says to expect rain and snow. Friday should bring warmer temperatures and a high of 5 Celsius, and sunny skies are in the weather's agency's forecast for the day, followed by cloudy periods and a low of 1 degree Celsius at night. In the evening, there will be a 30% chance of either rain or snow, Environment Canada said. Saturday is again expected to bring sunshine along with some clouds and a 30% chance of rain showers or flurries. The daytime high will reach 4°C. The temperatures are forecast to drop at night with a low of -9 Celsius and 40% chance of flurries. The cold but bright conditions are predicted to remain Sunday. Environment Canada projects a mix of sun and clouds with a high of -5 Celsius during the day and a 30% chance of snow. The temperature will plummet to a low of -13 Celsius at night, finally clear skies. Though no major storm system is expected over the next few days, Coulson predicts Toronto has more winter weather to come, along with the potential for some pretty messy weather in March, with rain, snow, freezing rain, and ice pellets, all possible. And that's all I can fit in for today, so I will end with, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 26th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Jane. Thank you for listening.